Hello and welcome to another episode of Seddon and Laceys Comic Stash. And this week we are talking about potentially comic of the year, The Nice House on the Lake.
You've built it up a little bit there, haven't you? What are you going to do if I turn around and say, "That's bollocks, isn't it?"
Well, I know that you like it because it was number 2 in your list from last year, but you read it.
It's,
You read the first part last year, and I've read all of it this year, so
it's
I
true.
think
It
I'm
is
on
true.
safe grounds.
I did give you a little bit of a spoiler, didn't I, by going, "Well, read this. It's brilliant."
But as always, as is tradition, before we talk about what we're talking about, let's get in our dirty reading corners.
Happiness is just around the corner.
Um, our dirty reading corners,
Yes.
and I love it being a dirty reading corner because it feels so us, and obviously it fits the motif of the picture that runs. I might have to start to do a bit of a twist on this because before I go into what I've been reading, um, I have been loving everything I've been reading, like really, literally, and to a degree, I am starting to wonder whether this is slightly a bit of mania or I've joined the comic cult again because I can't imagine everything I'm reading is as good as I think it is. But even if it's good or not, I've just had such a joy of reading comics I'd say certainly post Christmas. Like everything I pick up on Marvel Unlimited or DC Ultra or any going through any of the trades, I'm just gobbling it up. And one of the things the thing that I was going to say for Reading Corner this week was I've just read the first trade of so it's Amazing Spider-Man, but it is not the current run, it is the last one. So
Hmm.
where I'd previously sort of stopped reading Spider-Man was Dan Slott did a huge long run on it and I loved it. And when it ended, Nick Spencer was coming on to be the new writer. And do you know what? As much as I loved the Dan Slott run, I felt like I needed a bit of a break from Spidey.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes when you've just been reading a character non-stop for such a while, and
Me
then
with Batman.
yeah, exactly that. But unfortunately, kind of my break was a lot longer than I'd planned it to be. So I missed the whole of this Nick Spencer run, and I was quite tempted to read the new one, but I thought, no, go back to it. So yeah, read the first 6 issues of it this week. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Now, uh, that's why I caveat it with I think I've turned into a bit of a comic zealot of loving everything because the first couple of issues of it really does what I have experienced in the world of Spidey a number of times, where a new writer comes on and kind of goes, "I'm taking over Spider-Man. Here's what you need to know about Spider-Man," and not just like the big "with great power comes great responsibility," but here's the stuff that was happening in the last series. So the first couple of issues is really just kind of recapping where he is
Yeah.
and giving you like your little jump off points to where he's going to go. So from the previous series, he I won't spoil too much, but effectively at certain points he'd become like the owner of a billionaire company and all this jazz. So when we're getting him, he's kind of down on his luck a little bit. He's lost his degree for reasons that I won't go into for anyone who hasn't read the Dan Slott run because it's a brilliant storyline. Um, and and I don't know, you're kind of re-establishing him with his status quo, adding in some new characters, and you get in this first 6 issues, you get Mysterio, you get the Lizard, you get Craven, you get Rhino, and it was just so lovely and comfortable to come back to these characters that I'd seen done before. And no, they're not different. They really aren't. They're kind of it was like putting on oh god, probably should say, but like putting on like a really nice pair of slippers when you want a really
Yeah.
nice pair of slippers on. But with these hints of where the story's going to go. So he introduces a new villain in it, which is who's got a really good, cool look to him, and um, he's because he's lost his degree, he's now going back to college to re-get his degree, and the Lizard, Dr. Kirk Connors, is his teacher. And there's a storyline in here where um, he actually, for an issue, gets separated from Spidey. So the um, the bit of kit, the machinery that first imbued the Spider with the powers that radioactively made him into Spider-Man. Like Kurt Connors redesigned that for a science experiment, and during some fisticuffs, Spider-Man and Peter Parker get separated. So you actually get an issue where you get to see what Peter Parker's life will be like if he doesn't have to go and rescue people all the time, and he gets to spend time with Mary Jane. It's just the first step on this journey, but I bloody love this first step. But I know I said caveat earlier, but I'm not sure it actually does anything wildly new and different. It just tells those stories really comfortably well, and I
Yeah.
wanted it. The art on it by Ryan Otley, who is Invincible artist,
Yeah.
and this was his first bit of Marvel work. Oh, it is his Lizard, his Rhino, his Mysterio. Oh, beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I know you started Invincible. His Peter Parker kind of looks like Mark from Invincible as well. So it does somewhat feel like a crossover to a degree. But no,
Yeah.
I don't know like what the quality will be long term on it, but certainly if you just want a nice pick up a
Jump in.
Spidey trade that you can have a jumping on point. It tells you everything you need to know as to where he is, and then gives you a hint of where it's going to go. But yeah, really enjoyed it, loved it a lot.
Nice. Anything else in your corner this week?
I was going to talk about, because I mentioned Dan Slott. I was going to talk about when Dan Slott left Amazing Spider-Man, he took over Fantastic Four, but because of work commitments today, I haven't got to finish the last issue of that first trade. So I'll come back to that next episode. But I will say, loving that as well.
So I have done Batman Corofafini. It's
The
a
Kevin Smith one, is it?
yeah, the three-piece
Yeah.
Kevin Smith little bit. Interesting. I wouldn't say amazing and a must-read, but it was very interesting. I did like what he did with Batman. Nothing groundbreaking, but it's very much Joker and Batman at each other, and if one dies, they'll both die, sort of thing. You know, can't have him not be there. But yeah, as I said, for a Kevin Smith written thing, I was like, this is going to go either one or two ways. I was like, it's either going to be amazing or it's going to be shit. But it's sort of in the middle. There is another Kevin Smith Batman run that I've seen. It's like a 6-issue one that is in my list to get to. But after reading that, it's not, oh shit, I need to jump on it ASAP.
I've got a bit of a strange question about this series. Does
Yes.
Batman wet himself at any point?
No.
Okay, that's the other Kevin Smith series then. I
Ah.
didn't. Yeah, and I'm trying to just remember. I remember there being a bit of a furore at the time of going. I think in one of them, Kevin Smith likes to lean into humour, doesn't he? And also like realism as well. And I believe there's in one of the things that he does, and I thought it was one of the limited series where I think he gets punched so hard, a bit of wee wee sneaks out, and I think it was kind of taken quite badly from Bat fans and things like that. But I couldn't remember it was this. I loved Kevin Smith's run on Daredevil. And I'm sure I have read some Kevin Smith in the DC. I think he did some Green Arrow that I read. I think I never went to his Batman stuff because the only thing I knew is the criticism about Batman might have wet himself once.
Yeah, as I say, isn't this one? So I'm going to guess it's the other
Yeah.
trade that he's done. And the other thing that I've been reading is a beast. It is Alan Moore's DC collection.
Oh yes, you have been, haven't you? We spoilers. We have had a little bit of talksy offline about some of the stuff you've been reading in that, haven't we? So
Yes. So with this is like, I think it's give me 2 seconds. 20 different issues in a collection. Goes from him doing some Batman, Spider-Man, Green Lantern, Vengeance, or
does some of the
Vigilante
world's
even.
Does some of the
one
Wildstorm characters, doesn't he? Yeah.
Scarlet, Phantom Stranger. It's a little bit hit who you like, whether you like like the base character. Even I'm not a massive Green Lantern fan, and even Alan Moore's wizardry couldn't bring me around to the Green Lantern stuff.
I think I said to you though, like I haven't read his Green Lanterns, but it's certainly when you like read on Twitter or probably more old school, like people who talk about it on like websites, etc., etc., etc. The Alan Moore Green Lanterns are very revered, but I guess your mileage may vary depending on your feeling of Green Lantern. Full stop.
Yeah.
It could be the best Green Lantern comic ever, but he's still like, I don't really like Green Lantern comics, so it's not for me, maybe.
Yeah, so a couple of bits that I really liked in there was there is a Swamp Thing and Superman crossover, um, the Jungle Line. That was really cool. Um, one of or easily the best Superman thing that I've read is his What Happened to the Day of Tomorrow, or the Man of Tomorrow, two-parter.
And again, hugely revered. I think I mean, Superman fans have probably read tons of Superman, so possibly for some of them they might have more favoured runs. But I think in like the comic book pantheon, that's often revered as some of, if not the greatest work on Superman.
Yeah, really liked the Death Blow as well, but my favourite was this four-part Voodoo series.
I mean, you said to me about it, didn't you? You said jump all over this. You're gonna like it, and I said like I am planning on doing a kind of a whole Wildstorm universe kind of read at some point, and so I'll pick it up then. But I don't think I'd have had, as much as I like Alan Moore, I don't think I'd have had any real excitement about it until you told me how good it was. So yeah, it's now kind of, it's almost made me want to get to my Wildstorm universe read quicker so I can get to it.
Yeah, it is one of those it is something that only Alan Moore would write. It is dingy, it is corrupt. There's voodoo and evil in it, and there's a morality there as well that he wizards into fucking everything in that way that he does.
I love that. He wizards into everything. I'm going to try and use that in my work life from now on. I'm just going to wizard this into the email tray or whatever.
You need to, grow the wonderful beard and have the hair to fully wizard the way of Alan
Dude,
Moore.
I can't grow a beard, man. I tried. I just have to be a trainee wizard. Whatever. I'm sure there's I've read Harry Potter. I'm sure I should know what that's actually called, but let's go with trainee wizard for the sake of this.
But yeah, no, that is a really good collection. As I said, for someone that a lot of the characters, other than obviously I know Superman, I know Batman, I know Green Lantern. A lot of it was stuff that I'd never read before, of characters I've never read before. So I went in going, "Ooh, let's see who this is," and it's just how Alan Moore writes and everything. It just drags you in and grabs you so quickly. As I said, even what he does with Spider-Man, I'm just like, fuck me, or not Spider-Man, Superman. I'm like,
Superman,
fuck me,
yeah.
a Superman story that I can get behind and I like.
Well, we did say, and we will at some point, we did say that over the course of this year, possibly next year at this point, because of the amount of stuff we're reading, the amount of stuff we keep adding to the list, is to have maybe a bit of a binge across some of the Superman stuff. And certainly that, like, What Happened to the Man in Tomorrow was kind of in my mind as one of the things I wanted to do. And like I think I said to you before, in my limited Superman read, my favorite Superman story series, whatever you want to do it, is All Star Superman by Grant Morrison, and I think that's often the way to maybe to connect to those characters that you don't instantly connect to, is find a great writer that you like that has done something on it, and they may well pull you in because they've got, and I'm not even going to say like an odd take, but just a take that's probably more interesting to me.
Yeah.
And I think having British voices on Superman intrigues me.
But yeah, no, as I said, I definitely would recommend cracking into it. I probably wouldn't, say it's one of those of must-have jump on straight away. But if you've got Ultra, it's there, and
They've
if
got
you
some
do,
others as well, haven't they?
they've got
They're doing
a
a run of creators, aren't they, on there at the
yeah.
moment?
I've downloaded the Gaiman one
Yeah.
because that's my next big boy of like, oh, just feed me some Gaiman, and hopefully it's Gaiman levels of weird and wonderful that his other stuff is, which I love,
Yeah.
and literalness as well, which is what he usually gives us.
Yeah, using
Literal
fantasy
humour.
with literal, yeah, it's an amazing kind of and compelling technique, isn't it? Of going, I'll put you in a fantastical situation, but to you as the reader, you'll feel the reality and the literal like storytelling beats that come with it. And I'm intrigued to read a bit more of him because we're going through Sandman. For anyone who hasn't seen it on the channel, we've got volume 1 and 2 of Sandman videos, volume 3 to come soon. And we read 1602, which we've also got a video
Yeah.
for. But I don't know. I feel like there's probably some big gaps in his comic book work, or I say some big gaps, some small big gaps, because he didn't do a lot of long runs outside of Sandman, that I just haven't filled. So yeah, this is probably perfect for me. Maybe jumping in and picking up those single stories or shorter stories that would be included in a collection like this.
Yeah, so that is my next big read. I've got some other bits and pieces lined up, but more of those when I read them.
Remind me, have you read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing? Because I know you mentioned the Swamp Thing Superman crossover.
I haven't read Alan Moore's Swamp Thing.
Well, we've got all the spare time in the world, so we can just read comic books all day. But get that added to your list because that is amazing. I think it's. I've not read everything Alan Moore, but it's my favourite Alan Moore. And therefore, also, it makes it not only my favourite Alan Moore, but very high up in the pantheon of great comic book runs I've ever read. He does a fantastic job with Swamp Thing.
Yeah, it's one of those of I know you've gone on about it and said about it before. It's just the stuff that I've read of Swamp Thing has never grabbed me. But with
Possibly, though,
reading this
yeah.
and this little crossover, I was like, ooh, I like this. I like this
Yeah.
of what they've done
Well,
with Swamp Thing. So I think it is going to be one that you'll have to remind me or just put it into my save list.
well, I
Because you
think
have that power.
I do. I think like you, I think I probably wouldn't have jumped to the character or it necessarily being a character that I possibly would have resonated to. But because the first thing I read of Swamp Thing was the Alan Moore run, and he convinced me that one, he was a genius to us writing this, and two, that great stories can be told with that character. It has allowed me to dip back in over the years as other creators have come on and like I've talked recently about the current or the latest Ram V run. Big selling point because I really like Ram V, but Swamp Thing is now a selling point. So I'm going, a writer I really like with that character that I know other writers I've liked have done some great stuff with. So yeah, he is now actually a draw to me as a character, despite the fact that probably on paper wouldn't be my cup of tea normally.
Yeah. So shall we get into the meat of the show?
Let's take ourselves to a nice house on the lake, shall we?
We shall. So, Nice House on the Lake, a 12-issue horror?
Yeah, yeah.
Sci-fi?
I think if I had to classify it under one genre, I think I would say horror. If I could only classify it under one.
Yeah, there's some sci-fi there. There's mystery, a bit of detective work going on as well.
Yeah, and when you say mystery, like very much like as a reader, one of the draws in the same way that lots of other things have done and TV shows have done of kind of page turner mystery, isn't it? Because you're going, I need to know what's going on, and you're going on this journey with the characters to try and figure out what the hell is going on. Yeah, but kind of almost crime novelesque, isn't it? Like
Yeah.
there's not a who done it, but it's that who done it mentality, isn't it? Of going, I need to know the answers. Give me the answers.
Yes. So you said you read this in two parts, because you read the first part last year.
Yes. In fact, for an interesting fact, I was staying in a house next to a lake when I read this, and it was a nice house as well. But and I didn't choose to read it because of that. But yeah, that was very coincidental. But at that point, all that was available on Infinite, 'cause we didn't even have Ultra then, was the first 6 issues. So effectively the first trade. So I read that first trade. Really, really liked it. You said earlier it did make my top 2 of the things I'd read last year, and I anxiously awaited the conclusion of it. But bearing in mind, I knew I wanted to read the second part when it was all done, and they were in a hiatus. So I'd read the 6 issue basically as it become available, and then they took a gap of, I think, about 4 months before they come back for 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So it felt like a hell of a long wait for me to get to it.
Yeah. Obviously, you had said about it, and I was like, I'm just going to wait for the whole run before I did it. And then I saw that the last one I got up was like, right, time to jump in. So this is James Tinian the third,
Fourth. And I presume you pronounce it Tinian the fourth. It's Tinian 4 in Roman numerals, and I would pronounce it the fourth. But yes, but if you don't, James, apologies, James Tinian 4. Writing wise, have you read anything else of his?
I swear I've seen his name on some things that I've read.
He's done quite a lot of Batman stuff in recent times, and he did he did Joker War.
Yes, I was gonna say I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure he did the Joker saga, and I think
Yeah.
he might have done one of the One Bad Days.
Oh, I think you're right. I think he did, but certainly a bit of a kind of writer du jour of DC in recent times. In that kind of Scott Snyder, Tom King. Then it went to James Tinian the fourth on Batman. I mean, I've read bits and bobs, but this was actually me kind of going, before I really tuck into his, let's say, more mainstream stuff. Let's try one of his other series. Is something a little bit different. Very good, isn't he?
He is.
That boy knows how to write a comic book.
Knows how to write a story.
Yeah.
Tell a story. So this is on Black Label, which again automatically makes your ears prick up a little bit, because you know that means that it's going to be. I hate to use the word adult as a sort of thing,
Yeah.
but it's gonna be something with a bit more depth than just punch, kick, pow. I've taken down the villain, and yay is me as a hero. So it does always give you that thing of like, actually, this is going to be a bit grown up. This is going to be something to make you think. I always notice with the Black Label stuff.
And I think Black Label as a let's say a publishing line, it's slightly different to Vertigo, isn't it? And when I say slightly different, I mean Black Label now has really kind of become DC's place to do, as you say, like more adult or more genre different things. So they will have things that lean more into horror and things like that, and stuff that is as a story not tied to the DC universe, so a universe in its own, but also it's where they land now a lot of the, let's say, the maxi series, where they want someone to tell a story even about a superhero, but they're kind of going, clear distinction here, not for your kid necessarily, and also not in continuity, although that's a bit weird with DC, because DC do claim now that everything's in continuity. But and I use the term vertigo because one of the things that attracted me to this is it kind of, even pre-reading it, like reading the premise and seeing the covers, I thought, oh, this feels like something that if Vertigo was still an imprint, this would be a Vertigo book.
Yeah.
And spoilers from reading a lot of it, even more at the end of it, I went, this is a Vertigo book. This, like it fits that kind of world of what DC used to do and how they used to publish it under that. But yeah, Black Label is fast becoming something where I see Black Label and I go, okay, add that to the list. Even if I'm not going to read it straight away, there's probably something in it for me.
So the premise, we will not go spoilerific and completely sort of discuss every plot beat and
Yeah.
twist, because I'm going to say this now. You should go out and read this if you haven't, because it's amazing.
And I think it's fair to say on the spoilers, we kind of said before we started this, we be conscious of spoilers, because I think some of the things when we're talking about what we liked about it, it is inevitable that we are going to touch on some plot points because it just wouldn't make any sense without it. But yeah, it's not a spoilerific talk you through the whole story plot. Da 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 da. We more want to talk about the things that we like about it. And I mean, you've just said it about going out and read it. I think we've made it clear up until this point, but we both really liked this, didn't we? This was. I was worried after reading that first 6 and putting it number 2, and I think I said it on my top 5 at the end of the year, of going, the problem with these things sometimes is, do they stick the landing? Does it go off the boil? And it didn't for me. I really love this as well.
Yes. So the premise is that 10 people are invited to spend a holiday with their friend Walter in his nice house on the lake. It opens up, which is something that happens in all the issues. You open up with a big bit on one of the characters
Yeah.
and how they know Walter and how they met Walter and their connection to him. So you get, is it Ruby the first one, the artist, or no, Ryan the artist is the first
Yeah.
one, and the first thing you get is Walter talking to her of how would you see the end of the world coming.
And not to kind of dive too grossly in depth about this at the moment, but you're right. I mean, this is a motif that runs through every issue, isn't it? Every issue starts with one of the group of friends, and we'll call them the group of friends for sake of ease as we go through this. They, in some cases, they're moving the plot forward, but generally it's centered around their relationship, either past, present, or future, with Walter. But it's done in a really compelling and interesting way, because it will tend to be focused on a singular interaction, won't it? So as
Yeah.
you say, in this first one, it is um uh they're both kind of, I'm going to say out of do British terminology, but at a party, and kind of awkwardly maybe not having that connectivity so much between them, friends of a friend, that sort of thing, but making this connection around this discussion of, if the world was going to end, how would you want it to end, or how do you think it would end? And then, like, during these first kind of story beats, you follow that this conversation kind of cements them as friends and continues. And it's just, I'm certainly going to talk a lot about the things that made me really really love this. And this was a really key to me, was having every issue start with this. So I'm getting to know the characters in the world, so the group of friends. I'm getting to know more about the world, and I'm getting to know more about Walter, who is a big central character to this, because he's the connective tissue for all of them. And the rest of the issue that happens, you do get flashbacks here and there, but predominantly the rest of the issue will be in now.
In the
So
now, yeah.
yeah, House on the Lake and onwards. And I think it was really refreshing to have it done this way. Like, it was almost like a great intro every it pulled me back into
It's like pre-credits.
Nice House on the Lake. Yeah.
like in a good TV show, you'll have your little pre-credit bit to sort of go, "Ooh, what are we getting in this
Yeah.
episode?"
But
Entrance, go.
yeah. But using it as a technique to, I mean, it's 12 issues. We've just said like 10 people go to this house and Walter. Psst, we might mention some other characters, and that's a lot of characters that you know nothing about to try to get you to learn some things about and give a crap about over 12 issues whilst having a narrative story that you want to tell. But this felt like it got a load of those characters over the line for me. I was much more interested in all of them because of what's done in the first 2 or 3 pages of each issue, possibly for a lot of them even more than anything they do in the main bulk of the story.
Yeah. So the first issue is you see them all arriving at the house, and they've all got random symbols because they all have a specialty, shall we say?
Yes. Yeah.
So there's an artist, there is a doctor, there's a comedian, there's an
A
accountant.
reporter,
Yeah,
writer. Oh, I'm struggling. In fact, I'll just turn my head to side. Consultant, yeah, doctor, the,
scientist,
the pianist,
pianist.
yeah. And did we say comedian? But yeah,
Yes,
there's 10 people, 10. They have 10 characters assigned to them, or in to the most part for this, it's kind of vocations, isn't it? Or a
yeah.
descriptor that might describe a part of their life. And as you say, each of those descriptors has a symbol attached to it.
So they get to the house and they see that because a lot of them don't know each other, they all know Walter, but a few of them have some shared histories.
Yeah.
Um,
They fit kind of some like little groupings, don't they? So there's like his friends from high school, his friends from college, some post college, and some who are kind of relatively new in his life. And a lot of them probably, well, I think they all say along the way that most of them have heard of each other, but not all of them have necessarily interacted, or certainly not as much as some of the others have over the time.
yeah. Um, and they're there. They're like, "Oh, this is an amazing house."
It is an amazing house, by the way.
Is
Like, it does look absolutely baller. I'd love to
yeah.
live there. I told you I was at a nice house on the lake whilst reading it. It weren't anything close to this. Like, I would say after reading this, I'd go, as much as I thought I was in a nice house, I'm in a okay house. But
And then we see Walter arrive
yes,
at the house and drops a little bit of a bombshell that they can't leave because the world's ended.
yep. And you know, like when we said about what we do as spoilers, like this one feels relatively safe because I think the premise is probably like if you tried to buy the tray from Amazon and you read the screed, I think it probably mentions that in there. But we are talking about very early on in issue 1. There's no dragging that out. It is
No,
the
it's
come
like
to our
midway through.
house, yeah, meet each other. Oh, by the way, the world has ended. Everything in the world has ended. And we're here. Let's crack on with the story. And I like premises like this, and I'm not just sort of talking about the end of the world. I like the big intriguing story because, of course, as soon as you hear end of the world, this group's there, your mind starts racing straight away to kind of go, well, what do you mean the world has ended? Why has the world ended? Why are they safe? Why are they here? And you know, we talked earlier about the mystery. It layers on these thick, juicy layers of mystery. So to take even one step back, where you said about the symbols for the characters and the job descriptions of them, like already you're kind of going mystery, intrigue. Why is it this? And yeah, halfway through issue 1, world's over, crack on. Oh, absolutely beautiful, beautifully done.
Yeah, because as soon as I got to to when Walter tells us that the world's ended, I did find myself scrolling back, going, so we've got an artist, we've got a nurse, and sort of going through what everyone's professions was, and going, what is this motley crew gonna needed for? What are their purposes?
Yeah.
What can they bring to some form of saving of civilization? Because in that first one, you're like, so where are we going from here? Are we these are the last people that are going to go and save the world? Are
Yeah. Well,
these going to recreate the world? Or
and you
there's
said
so
like
much.
having things like a scientist and a doctor, you kind of go, okay, if you were picking professions that you might need to survive the end of the world, you kind of see
Yeah,
it.
them.
But no offense to anyone who's watching, is this? But then you get to pianist and you go, I'm not entirely sure I can see the situation where there'll be essential pianist other than I quite like piano music. So yeah, yeah, you are right. You're kind of going, um, where does their function and why does this form and function? And I think it's probably wise to say as well that Walter doesn't have this, doesn't he? And I know that he is the
Yeah,
person who has it, but Walter is Walter. Whereas for all these other characters, you're learning their first name, surname, and at least by extension, probably part of their skill set because of this. And then you have Walter as this kind of enigmatic. He knows the world has ended. He's telling them the world has ended, so there's something clearly different from him. But like this is, I go back to this is issue one, and I know there's a big part in anything you do, like be it a TV show, a book, like chapter one, episode one. You probably should be trying to capture your audience then, but oh, this does it so well. Like it had its hooks into me, and I would say, in all honesty, the hooks never got out of me because it continued to layer on the mystery whilst giving you stuff as well.
yeah,
I think it's fair and probably at this point to say that as outlandish potentially as the premise may seem, and that it's hard to maybe kind of go, I don't see the connectivity here yet. It does give you information, doesn't it? It doesn't kind of go, you know nothing for 12 issues, last page, ta-da! It
yeah.
is meeting you out information as you go.
Yeah, it goes along at a decent pace. So that's issue one. Like issue sort of two onwards, it gives you like a breakdown on day one, day
Yeah,
three, day seven. So it sort of moves it along a bit in time frames and stuff. But it also they find things, they discover bits, they work bits out that you're like, and it's big plot points and sort of things
yeah.
that will come in to bits that you need to know during it. So it's not just, oh, well, the world's ended. We've sat here for a month and gone. Should probably do something now.
And I guess to help with that mystery element, so I'll take like one example of something that like isn't very spoilery. Like in the surrounding areas, they find statues. So then you kind of go, oh, what are these statues? And where having that cast of 10 characters helps is it allows you to look at how lots of different people cope with this. But one of the key bits is that you have a couple of people who react with a lot of curiosity. They want to know, much as I, as a reader, wanted to know.
Yeah,
Where you've got some people who just got like, I ain't leaving this house. Whereas other people are going, I need to know, I'll do some exploring. And so, yeah, it allows these multifaceted ways to move the story on. So, moving the bigger story in the mystery whilst allowing it to have a lot of time to look at character studies. And when I say character studies, you don't know any of these going into it. But you know some of the archetypes, like you'll know people, or in some cases it'll be yourself where you go, I think that's how I react, how I would react. And you get to follow these characters and kind of go, after you've been told the world is end, what would you do? P.S. Here is how 10 people would react to that.
yeah. Um, so there is lots of little sort of nuggets along the way that sort of just drip feed you a little bit of information that turns out you need at different points during it. But the one thing that they also do really well in this is the last page will always be a little cliffhanger of
Dun, dun, dun.
yeah, which is perfect, which makes you want to go straight into the next issue. Which thankfully I had all 12 to that I could blitz it.
Well, I was going to say, I know I told you this, and I didn't mention it earlier, but I had read the first 6, hadn't I? And then when as soon as we saw issue 12 go up, we were both quite giddy about it. But we're like, oh, come on, let's just read it. And I thought, oh, do you know what? I'll read 7 to 12, but I didn't. I went back to issue 1 and did all 12 in a row. And I would say, as much as I loved the first 6 the first time, I think I liked it even better the second time because I had a bit more context for some of the stuff that maybe I didn't see first time round or didn't pick up first time round. But if I was going to recommend this to anyone in any format, get all 12 issues and read the lot. Like, do it as one job block. So I think it's really enhanced by, and much because of what you said there, because of the cliffhangers. And it's really nice to go, dun dun dun. Oh, I've got to read more. I mean, I think I blitzed it in one evening, but partially I actually started it quite late, and then it was like, well, I don't want to go to sleep. I want to read what happens next, and you know that's hard to recreate, isn't it? You know, in any form of media, something that pulls you in, that unputdownable book, that movie that you could watch 1,000 times, that TV show that keeps you coming back for 5 or 6 series. This had all of those mechanical parts done
Yeah.
significantly well to scratch that itch for me. Addictive, I'd even go as far as saying.
Yes. The art is stunning in this, and it's not conventional comic art. A lot of it is out of focus at
Yep.
times.
There is in so many
Murky.
panels a blur, yeah, murkiness and blur, isn't there? And it just makes it stand out, doesn't it? And I think for that visually for you as a reader, I talked earlier about how much I love the art in Amazing Spider-Man at the moment, but it's very kind of like it's beautifully drawn generic superhero stuff, whereas this, I not only wanted to turn the page to find out in words what was happening, I wanted to turn the page to see what I'd be visually greeted with on the next page.
Yeah, and there is such contrast from one page to another because there's, as you say, there's pictures of or drawings of the house, which are like really, really nice, stunning bits of art that you could actually, have as a print in your house.
Yeah.
And then there's other bits that are just dirty and disgusting looking bits, especially some of the Walter stuff.
Which, to be honest, I'd still have in my house.
But
Yeah.
is wouldn't be what you'd have like as a if you were looking for pictures for your house, you wouldn't have see that and go, oh, that looks nice, as it's disturbing. Think the Scream sort
I'd
of
have it in this room rather than the lounge if I had guests round, that sort of
yeah.
thing. Yeah.
But yeah, no, the art, as I said, for a very unconventional art type, is fucking stunning and drags you into the story so much as well. There are
I wonder if younger me, like much younger me, might have struggled with the art a little bit more because, as you say, it is. We said earlier about if I had to put it in one genre, what genre would I put it in? The art is the thing that really leans me into horror because it has that unsettling tones to so much of it. But you're right, like when he's doing a beautiful situation, like the house, it is. But I felt often unsettled and unnerved by the art, but loving that unsettled feeling that I was having. And I think you're right with things like the Scream. Yeah, it's that you wouldn't give him an A plus 10 out of 10 if you said draw a picture of me and make it look exactly like me. But if you said interpret a feeling, a scene where you want to unsettle someone, and you go, boom, you are fantastic at that.
And another thing that they do, which I'm surprised because I know, you know, space and time and money and collateral on a page, but there are a lot of panels where they're just dark black panels.
Yeah.
And it just sort of fits. Everything fits on this. There's one where they're with Nora, who's the writer, in the second half of the second trade, where I think it's about 5 or 6 pages, where it's just black pages
Yeah.
with some white text on, and I was just like, this is perfect and exactly what it should be. I don't need art for this. This is what it has to
Well,
be.
it's that thing, isn't it? And I know, like, you always get into that. Art is subjective, but let's talk about kind of comic book art in its more traditional format. You know, we are used to, in our superhero stuff. Let's go back to like the Image days, like the Jim Lee, you know, like and McFarlane's, where you're going, yes, you know, they look like heroes and the villains look like villains. Uh, this feels like art at points, while still being comic book done in panels, as you say. But I feel like every panel is done to serve the story rather than the story saying punch a dude. We just do a punch a dude, and yeah, you're right with things like that of going. You'll just have black panels, or even if there's a character in it, you know, like the background might just be black or white or whatever, but you know that there's stylistic, artistic choices. It's the I want to invoke something with this. I don't want to get too carried away because I'm sure within it there are panels that are just there functionally, but a load of them feel like they could just be the panel could be a painting in itself.
Yeah. So there's bits with Walter as well, who wears glasses, and they always just white out his glasses and
It
give
kept
his
making me
face this
think of
haunting look as well.
it
It's
kept
like,
making me think of Sin City.
yeah,
It kept making me think of that of again that artistic choice of going, and we said earlier about like laying those seeds of, because Walter is Walter and isn't afforded a second name for it and isn't given like this job role title, but things like that always made him feel, as much as everyone was talking about the group's connectivity is Walter, it then made him feel like he wasn't in the group, he was the anomaly, the outside factor. And
yeah.
yeah, absolutely amazing.
Um, it
Um,
said,
but before we go on from the art, just to
yeah,
I don't want to butcher his name, but it's Alvaro Martinez Bueno. Um, uh, I've not read anything else with him as artist. However, like post this, I did kind of go, what else has he done that I quite fancy? And he's done some detective comics, so he's done some Batman,
okay,
which I am very interested in seeing. And also, he was the artist on the. I'm not. I don't think it was the last Justice League Dark, but it was the Rebirth one. And I must admit, after seeing what he does here, I'm really intrigued to see what he does in more traditional superhero fare as well. Whether he brings this flair to it, or whether he kind of leans into, yes, I say more traditional superhero styling. So I will be coming back for more of him.
yes. One thing that I will say about this now, this needs to be a fucking TV show. Someone needs to pick this up because
Yeah,
this stinks of an HBO
it
level
does. Yeah, it
show.
does. Yeah, yeah,
Um, and you know, when you've got things like Walking Dead and like the amount of other comic book stuff that has been bought and licensed because of how big Walking Dead got,
yeah.
can I have this, please?
Yes,
Because
yes,
the
and
the
yes.
I if this became a TV show, I would definitely imagine that the books would definitely start flying off because people would be like, "Oh my fuck, let's find the source material for this." Because I this is one of those things. Again, we say it quite a bit that we would hand this to non-comic book readers.
Hell
This
yes.
this is one of those ones where I would hand it to a non-comic book reader quite easily,
Yeah.
but I could see how they wouldn't get on with it. But at the same point, if I went, here it is as a TV form,
TV show, yeah, yeah.
they would it would be the sort of thing that every fucker would be waxing lyrical about.
It's a shame, isn't it? We've mentioned it on so many of these of going, how do you turn people who consume comic book based stories in other formats into comic books? But I'm 100% with you. I think this would be a TV show that most of the people I know that watch TV would love. I would want to hand them the comic book, but I think some of the things like the art might be a barrier to entry, and as much as comic books are. Um, but I think you're right as well, though. I think it would sell bloody loads of copies after people have watched the TV show.
Yeah. If you look at, I know you haven't seen it, but you look at like Walking, Last of Us at the moment. That that is everyone is going on about it. Everyone's watching it because it's
Yeah.
the big thing. This could be that level.
Well, and as a kind of, I guess, comparative point, loads of people who are watching that, and don't get me wrong, I know how popular the game is and how many copies it sold, but let's be honest, most of the audience watching this TV show haven't ever played the game and probably never will because they're not game players. And
Yeah,
but I could see them then going out and buying like Last of Us merch. Same thing for this. I think it would pull in the punters to use again a bit of English terminology very, very quickly and very, very easily. And because of things like that comfort zone of so end of the world, I think that would intrigue a lot of people. But before you get to that, it is that simple but not simple premise of here are 10 stroke 11 stroke 12 human beings that you can follow along with in this. And I think a lot of people will always buy into that. They'll always
yeah,
go, yeah, I'm a human. I quite like seeing human beings do things or interested in seeing what human beings will do. And despite the places the story goes, it never loses sight of that, does it? It never loses
no,
sight of going, the important thing here is these characters and how they're experiencing it. So we waxed lyrical earlier about the mystery of it, but the mystery is could ultimately, I think, be described as fluff. It's the thing that gets you through the door, but it's the being interested in what happens to these people more than why it happens, which is ultimately what keeps you there.
yeah. As I said, we're not going to go too in depth, which is where we're going to probably call this a thing because if not, we're
Well,
going to
I,
start
I
going
was
into
only
too
gonna
much on the story.
I was going to ask a couple of things. I'd
Yes,
asked like on a Facebook group I was on, like just about anyone who'd read it and thoughts and feelings, and I'd sort of say like generally positive. One of the closest things to negative that there was, and it really wasn't. Someone had read the first, I think, 7 issues, and I think kind of the gappage had been a problem. But one
yeah,
of the things they said, and now I've just sort of said about the characters, but it was kind of described as there were too many characters, and I don't know whether you felt that anyway through it. Like having that amount of size of cast. Did you ever feel that pulled you out of it, or maybe sometimes feeling like it was a little bit hard to potentially follow which one was which and which one was doing what at certain points?
so with the art, I can see how you could because they all have one or two things that are very them per character.
Yeah,
Like Ryan has blue hair, so you can tell her. Noah has a
yeah,
very distinctive look, so you can tell her. But some of the lads, like the pianist and the acupuncture guy and the comedian, are all quite similar looking. So I can see
yeah,
how that could.
when you get to like kind of the 30 plus to 50-year-old white guys, let's be honest, we're all interchangeable, aren't we?
But yeah, so there
That's why
are.
you have to have a beard so that they don't think it's just a mirror and it's just one of us putting on different voices.
So yeah, I could see that there is that, and some of the times, like the comedian, I think the first two issues he does very little, but then from issue 3 and 4 he comes into his own.
It's when he gets that cowboy hat, isn't it? That's when he comes
Exactly.
into his own, yeah. And
Um,
and that's non-spoiler, but if that's not enough to buy to get you to buy a series that in issue 3 one of the characters gets a cowboy hat, then you need to set your standards lower because that's the sort of thing that gets us through the door.
but yeah, no, I could see. I think if this was a TV show, again, I'm just
Yeah,
going that
yeah,
to, because you would definitely see, it would be much clearer to see the difference between each character.
yeah,
I don't think it would be as much of a problem. I think, as I said, I think because of the art style, as I said, there are some that do sort of meld together, and there are a few bits early on where you go to a one of the characters who you haven't they didn't really have a lot in the issue before, who are then the centerpiece of that issue, and you're like, but which
yeah.
one's that?
I know we kind of mentioned it earlier, like this framing mechanism of every issue, and you know, you sort of said like we end on a cliffhanger. We have the start, which will be a character like narrating a little bit of where we're at and a little bit of history and things like that. And that helped for me with that of kind of going, I know everyone's going to get almost their sort of star in show. And as much as we mentioned it earlier, where those sort of subtly change from issue 2 onwards we've done the end of the world bit then. So you're getting a lot more about the plot and the narrative from that issue onwards. So I quite hope that. But one of the other ones from the Facebook group, which I guess is really the counterpoint to did the amount of characters to leave you, and this was actually quite remarkable to read, and I think hopefully again a testament to how enjoyable this is. Yeah, and it was after reading it, made a 7 states, so clearly from America, trip to see friends they met in their 20s because it kind of inspired them with the story to kind of go, I want to reconnect with those people that I've had experiences with in my life, but potentially moved away from it. And you know that is part of the core of this, isn't it? It is a group of friends,
Yeah,
some closer than others, but you know you have that historic connectivity, and in some cases, um, those historic connectivity, even though there's a closeness, the resentment that can come from that as well. You know, like those historical things that happen, that petty little argument you had 20 years ago that made you never quite be the same with that person, but you're in a room with them 10 years later and you kind of go, but you are still my friend. You know, we've got that connective tissue, that connective
yeah.
history.
It's that thing of like, so for me, it's like thinking, like my mates from school. I haven't seen any of them in years, but
Yeah.
I can guarantee if one of them went, we're all getting together, we're going for a beer, we'd all go,
And
and
also you probably
would
snap
all,
back into that conversation
and it
quicker
would
with them
pick
than you
up,
would a stranger. Yeah.
yeah, and it would all pick up the same sort of thing as like we were 20 years ago, or 20 plus years ago now since school, where it'd be talking about football, music, and oh look at you, you've still got that long hair, and aren't you? Oh, you're still being the weird one. Where and they'll be like, oh look, you've got normal hair still.
Yeah. Well, and you know, like warts and all. So as much as you know, I'm very much like you. We probably lean into the like, oh, do you remember that time when we did our football, music, things like that? But the longer time you spend with it, and in this story, they spend a lot of days together, don't they? You said
Yeah,
like it says day 1, day 3, day, so you are kind of getting a sense of time with it. But even that rung really true to me of going. So with a lot of those people, apologies if anyone's watching this from back in the day, but yeah, probably one night in the pub together, we'd just be on the good times. Maybe if we went away for a weekend together as a group of friends, we might stand the good times. put me in a house with them, and vice versa.
for a month.
30 days in, I'll probably be remembering the stuff that really annoyed the crap out of me about them as well, like the warts and all mentality, and you just in a fantastical story. That's what sold it for me. Is that I've got this great imaginative premise, but it is those grounded story elements that I really wanted to come back for. And we said earlier about art style, and like we kind of said that James Tinian knows how to tell a story. It seemed almost simple when I come out the end of it, but throughout this series as well, you get lots of narrative parts, don't you? So you get to at certain points just see a series of text messages exchanged and things like that.
Yeah, the emails and
Yeah, it was great. It was absolutely great, wasn't it? And I
Yeah.
think it was great because it potentially gave you a break from the stuff that was happening over there, but in that familiar way, because we've all, everyone's got WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, whatever it is, and there are times, like most of us of an evening are kind of going through it and doing a chat thing, and it just felt so comfortable to go. And here I am seeing it. I'm seeing these characters as me and people I know, because
yeah,
they're kind of doing that chat bit on there, and there are other mechanisms that I won't go into for spoilers that follow that trend, but they're so welcome when they come up, and often they are used at key moments, great storytelling, to reinforce maybe the thing that has just happened. So you see it, you hear two people have a conversation, and then that's backed up by going, and yes, this was always there, because here's the text discussion between the two of them that took place a month ago, a year ago, 2 years ago. And I think if this story had been told in a more linear, traditional, all you're doing is page one, day one, and then you follow them through the story without this, I don't think it would have been anywhere near as good.
no, it wouldn't. I hate to call them flashbacks because they're not flashbacks as such, but they are just them. As I said, the beginning bit on each issue, when you go with the specific character and get how they know Walter and where they are at that point in the story.
Yeah.
And then, as you said, when you get the text bits or you get the emails pages of like you say it humanized it, but it breaks up what's going on and makes you then go, oh shit, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I said earlier about that fantastical thing. When you've got such a broad premise of a group of people living through the end of the world, but the end of the world with a mystery, this isn't like a lot of movies that we've seen where, in the first scene you see
The
the
volcano.
Russians fire off the nukes and stuff like that, and you kind of go, oh, they're just dealing with the end of the world. The end of the world and what causes the end of the world is a big plot point, is a big mystery. And sometimes those amazingly fantastical elements, it can become a bit grating and jarring, because you're almost going, oh yeah, here we go again. It's just, and we said about mystery and twists and cliffhangers. If you don't have that framing mechanism of the normality of those texts, the normality of the people, and when I say the normality of the people, it is normal people going through very, very difficult circumstances. I am going to touch on a plot point. There is a plot point that comes up about someone wanting to kill themselves, don't they?
Yeah.
And for me, it is probably not normal for most people to spend a lot of time doing it. But you see a normal person put into the situation, you can kind of go, okay, I understand that. I understand why you don't want to live through this. And when we talk about the 10 and the end of the world, bearing in mind that they may be a group of friends, but everyone there had other people in their life. So they've gone through great loss. And I smile when I say it. I don't find great loss funny, but it just popped into my head about how one of the characters kind of deals with great loss. Spoiler, he gets a cowboy hat. So you get every kind of facet that, and I think they all become more believable because of that. If it had just been, here's the jokester who jokes his way through the end of the world, and here's the person who's really morose, that's not enough. But because you get such a wide range of reactions and believable reactions,
and coping mechanisms.
yeah,
It
yeah,
shows different people's coping mechanisms with different situations.
yeah,
Uh, but yeah, must read, must buy. I implore you all
yeah.
to,
We,
if you have DC, um, you can read it all on there. I mean, you need Ultra for the last few new
yeah,
issues, but
yeah. I think 10, 11, and 12 are ultra only. So yeah, if you've got DC Universe Infinite, sorry, you've got a little bit of, you've got 3 months to wait till it's over, but it's worth the wait.
or do what I'm going to do, which is buy them in pretty.
So am I.
I'm tempted to see if they're doing a hardback of the whole thing together.
That's what I'll wait for. I'll wait for a glossy collection of the whole lot of it in a lovely hardback. Because I mean, we've joked before about like kind of that shelf pull mentality of a hardback looks good on a shelf, but some are, I think, just sings that even bit more on that glossier hardcover, higher quality paper, and I can't wait to see this in that format. And you know, we've on here we've done some classic runs, let's say. You know, a lot of the stuff we've picked out to read have been notable storylines that were already wowzers. You should read this. So we've waxed lyrical about some of them and said how good they are. There's also some stuff we've read that we haven't waxed lyrical quite so much with, but this for me is exactly what you said. I think it is a must read, certainly for comic book fans. And
Yeah,
I know that's a broad spectrum because comic book fans are um, like they'll play in a lot of different genres, but primarily we know a lot of superheroes. But I think it'd be a real shame for someone who likes the comic book format to not try this. And even if you try the first issue, I think that will capture so many people. But yeah, top recommendation from us, and it's nice to make a top recommendation for something that is very recent, and we haven't just come to it because people have told us how good it is. We kind of found it naturally, didn't we?
yeah.
We found it in the wild.
Put it this way: this has to be beat so far. This is the benchmark for the year for me.
I mean, it's this issue, this episode will actually release in Feb. But we read it in January. That's nice, isn't it? When you started off the year with going, I've already read something that is going to be really hard to beat by the end of the year for my top reads of the year, then that's a really good start to the year.
And put it this way: this if we were doing a top 10 of all time, it would definitely be in there. I don't know if it breaks my top 5 just yet, but
See,
it
I,
is in my top 10.
I know I've consumed and nom-nommed a lot more comic books than you, and that includes like I'm sure my worst list would be horrific compared to your worst list as well, like the stuff that the absolute pits that makes it onto there. I would say as much as I love this, it wouldn't be anywhere near my top 10, but it would be in my top 100, and wherever it lands in there, it's worthy of being there, and it would be in and around some fantastic comic book runs because I do think it's absolutely fantastic. James Tinian the Fourth, P.S. I am gobbling up everything else of you. I said earlier about wanting to hunt down some of Alvaro's art in other things, but uh, the only other thing that I'd say I have started on, which is something you and I are going to have to read because I really liked what I read of it, was I've read half of the first trade of Something is Killing the Children, which is one of his Boom Studio creator owned things, and I think it's probably his most well known and well loved series.
I've never
And
heard of it, but I'm
it
always
is
up for.
it's relatively recent, and it like I think it's onto like the 30-ish issues of it at the moment, but yeah, more of this, please. And I think we've got a special. I think we've got a special little boy here writing comic books with this guy.
So, if you have read Nice House on the Lake, don't know what you think about it.
And if
like
you
this-
haven't, why not?
because it's only just come out, let people catch
What?
up.
This is an outrage.
Books are unlike TV. You know, you don't have to consume it the moment it comes out.
Oh, one thing. Sorry, I meant to mention it during it, and it's such a little thing. But we talked about the art, and we talked about the symbols, and the covers of each issue are great as well. But on the cover of each issue as well, like
Yeah,
one of the symbols is highlighted, and it corresponds to, I guess, the narrator of each issue. And it's we often say about what elevates something from something that is, let's go with bad to start off with, to something that's average, to something that's good, that to something that kind of elevates above. And it's so often for me touches like that extra bit of effort, that kind of going, oh, that's something for people to buy into. That's an extra nugget, that and it feels like just that bit of extra care and love
Yeah.
and attention. And when you say about having to consume TV shows, the other thing I was going to say is like you mean like the Last of Us, that all of those people are consuming right now, except for those of us who live in households that don't have access to the TV channel that it's on.
exactly.
Yeah, boo hiss.
So as always, like, subscribe, ring the bell. Top 5
you
next week.
The thing is, you said, I just want to quickly say, yeah, I think we will do a top 5, won't we? You sort of said about anyone who's read Last House on the Lake as well. If anyone who has read it, drop us some recommendations of the things that you think we might like based off of it. Be that work of the artist, work of the writer, or just things of a similar vibe that you think we may not have read along the way that's worth us catching up with because of our love for this.
Yes. And especially if they're on DC or Marvel, because then we can
Yeah, that'd be handy.
nom them up easily.
Yeah.
So as always, thank you very much for watching. Go read Nice House on the Lake.
Go read comic books in general, because as I said earlier, all comic books are brilliant.
And if you want something to listen to while you're doing that,
Oh, yes.
we've got some reacts.
We better
Listen
well
to
have.
some Rammstein. We're doing a whole Rammstein album. Get on that.
We are.
And you know, there's some wonderful stuff in the back catalogue. Japanese metal. Methods
Funny you
of
should
Mayhem.
mention that. I was going to go piss off Methods of Mayhem. I was going to say, if you're going to pick any of our Reacts videos to watch.